Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Today, the travel ban went into place. And as Pat Buchanan was talking about, part of the issue with this is the demographic surge and the fact that we have people coming in massive numbers on to expand this entitlement state. A good example of this in Europe is Frankfurt. Now the first German city where native Germans are the minority. For the first time, more than half of Frankfurt residents have a migrant background. 51.2% of the people living in Frankfurt. 13% of the population of the city are Turks. And this is an interesting side note here. One of the individuals who is looking at the demographics is very excited about the fact that the new people coming in, the women of foreign origin, have a very high rate of single motherhood. They think that's a good thing because they said that it's higher, in fact, than it is for the native Germans. They said this is a possible sign that female migrants are emancipating themselves. It is not a good sign, folks, because when we have broken families, when we have single-parent families, what that does is that increases dependency on government, increases poverty, it ultimately increases violence. But they see this as a good sign. These are the people who are crafting our political policy, our demographic policy, saying broken families, single mothers are a great thing. It's something that a lot of people have to deal with, but should not be our goal. It's far more difficult to parent with just one parent, as anybody who's tried that knows. They say a book published last year predicted that native Germans would soon be reduced to minority in not only Frankfurt, but also Augsburg and Stuttgart, joining other minority cities in Europe like Amsterdam, London. We know how that has turned out. That's why we have Mayor Sadiq Khan in London. It is now a minority city. Brussels, where we see also a great deal of terror attacks, and Geneva. And they point out that 2/3 of young people in many Western European major cities are of foreign origin. So that brings us to Trump's travel ban. We have to get control of our borders. And if we can't control our borders in terms of people who are coming in that from countries that have been judged to be so dangerous that Barack Obama dropped bombs on them, how do we ever get control of our borders? These restrictions went into effect just as we began the news at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 Central here. And they're going to limit this. They're going to allow people to come in if they have a bona fide connection in the U.S. That would be defined as certain close family members of people who are already in the U.S. They would be exempt from the ban on entry, and that would include spouses, children, and siblings. However, extended family like grandparents, aunts, and uncles would not be extended in that. And the cities, or rather the countries that are involved in that are it's a 90-day ban on Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, places where there are massive wars underway, places where we have been involved in fomenting most of those wars as well. It also suspends all refugee admissions for 120 days. But of course, it is going to allow consulates at the State Departments to have significant discretion as to who they're going to allow in. And remember, it was just Monday that we talked to Michael Springman, who wrote a book called Visas for Al-Qaeda. And he talked about how, as a State Department employee in Saudi Arabia's capital, Jeddah, that he saw a lot of individuals that should not have been allowed into the country. They would first say, well, of course, that's your decision, but we would strongly suggest that you allow that. Then they would come in and say, you're going to be dismissed unless you allow that, because it was coming from, he learned eventually, the CIA. They wanted Al-Qaeda to get in. So don't worry. They'll still get the terrorist in, even though we have this policy. But the way this is being spun by outlets like The Guardian, an article here, in Trump's America, immigrant families would be kept apart. And he just doesn't care. Isn't that heartless? Understand, there is no right to immigration in the United States. And as I say here, unless you already got a visa, you may need a close relative in order to enter the land of the free and the home of the brave. Grandparents don't count, neither do fiancés. But see, they're not splitting up families. This policy is not splitting up families. The foreign citizens who are here by permission, presumably, and not illegally, but the foreign citizens who are here, they cannot bring their grandparents in, but if they want to reunite with their grandparents, nobody is stopping them from going back to their home country and joining their family, except perhaps maybe the fact that we have bombs being dropped on their countries. And so the question is, why don't they push for that policy to stop? Many of us would like to see the chaos that has been unleashed in the Middle East by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, like in Libya and in Syria and elsewhere. We would like to see that chaos stopped. And yet you don't see anybody complaining about this travel ban, saying we need to stop the wars, we need to stop the regime change that is setting the Middle East on fire. That is the hypocrisy. And if they don't care about that, you don't need to care about their phony cries about families being kept apart. It's just crocodile tears. Meanwhile, we have some good news today. I'll mention this in just the brief time we have. Conservatives are rejoicing, reports Liberty headlines, as Trump ends Obama's land and water grab. And remember, this was the idea that the EPA floated, that all water in the United States, not just navigable waters, but all water like ponds on your own property, could be controlled by the EPA. Remember, they levied tens of thousands of dollars of fines per day against one individual and then tried to garnish his wages. That's being reined in by the Trump administration. That's a very good sign. Now, stay with us when we come back. We're going to talk about the third highest member of the Catholic Church being charged with multiple counts by multiple people of pedophilia. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To celebrate this July 4th, I want to ask everybody to redouble their efforts to spread the word and to take action against tyranny. We have store-wide free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com through July 4th. Deep Earth Pure Iodine X2, now back in stock, 30% off. Z-Shield, our newest product out of the gates, 30% off because it's so amazing and I want you to try it. So for myself, the Infowars crew, and my family, I want to wish you all a wonderful 4th of July, and I want to thank you all for your support.